Data center essentially we are using for hosting everything what we are using on either our mobile devices or our laptops and desktops. It can be internet based contents like all our movies and games and e-commerce and everything what we do on internet, or it can be our enterprise applications, which can be our SAP, our Oracle, our email server, our insurance application, core banking application, whatever. So ultimately there are two purposes: internet facing applications, content which we all use as consumer focused content, and second is the enterprise employee focused content.
Thank you to our distinguished audience for joining us once again. We received over 350 registrations, most of whom are COs, CXOs, and business heads, and many of them are repeat visitors to our webinars. It's very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogues to the online modes as well. For those of you who are new with us today, the Blue Circle is a network and ecosystem curated for business leaders to help them manage disruptive times and become future ready. We focus on the four fundamental sectors, which are healthcare, energy, e-mobility, and real estate. We also present socio-economic insights, which ultimately determine the evolving complexion of the market. In response to the COVID challenge, the Blue Circle has also accentuated its digital presence. One of the many modes we employ is our weekly webinar series, our digital publication. We're also building a handpicked domain-focused expert pool drawn from among our leadership community or from our members and its associates that will guide businesses during and post-COVID in these four sectors. In addition to this, and you will be happy to know that we will be very soon launching an exclusive digital platform for leaders, a LinkedIn kind of platform for leaders, wherein we will present them the opportunity of connecting with people just like them. It will also house high quality curated content and meaningful conversations across these four sectors. So those leaders who are interested, please do write to us. We've also begun our outreach to our selective members. And the topic for today's session is data centers, a new asset class. As India's appetite for consuming data continues to grow rapidly, the demand for data centers is anticipated to increase multifolds due to IoT, data localization, and launch of 5G. We've today invited prominent practitioners and thought leaders from the sector. We're very privileged and thank you very much for joining in. In the best interest of time, I will just quickly mention their respective names and designations. We have with us Mr. Piyush Gupta, MD Capital Markets and Investment Services, Colliers International. Mr. Prashant Goyal, Director, Data Center Solutions, CBRE South Asia. Mr. Sharad Agarwal, Executive Director, Capital Markets, Knight Frank. Mr. Sunil Gupta, Managing Partner and CEO, Yota Infrastructure, Hiranandani Group Company, also known as the Data Center Man of India. And Mr. Vivek Dahiya, Managing Director, Logistics at Industrial India, Cushman & Wakefield. And the chair and moderator for the session is Mr. Pawan Chaudhary, best-selling author, CEO of French multinational Vigon, and sits on several boards across the country. Welcome, sirs. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, the audience, for joining. Kindly note that we will have Q&A towards the end of the session. Some of you have already shared excellent questions and they're with the moderator. And now I request Mr. Chaudhary to please chair and moderate the session, sir. You're on mute, actually. You're accidentally on mute.
So when currency was born, it led to the developments of banks to store and process money or financial transactions. When books came into the market, libraries were born. Even residential architecture changed to accommodate books. When data came into the market, data centers are getting born. And the closest analogy which I can draw between the birth of data centers is birth of the automobile fuel industry. before the gasoline-based automobile won the game, gasoline was only available in chemist shops, in small pint bottles. People had to go to several chemist shops to get their gallons and then fill their automobile. That is the time the industry decided to have the entire processing, extraction, processing, storage, and distribution network of fuel stations. So, if data is the new oil, then data centers are the new oil depots or the new fuel pump stations. That is how important they are going to become to data. Because so many of you are also coming from allied industries. I've seen many CXOs joining from allied industries like energy and EVs. I will ask the panel to first, in the first 5 minutes, bring everybody on the same page through a working description of a data center. And let me begin with Prashant. Prashant, would you like to tell the audience what is a data center exactly?
Sure.
Prashant.
Thank you, Pawan. I'll start with connecting the dots and bring all the stakeholders of this ecosystem on a common page. I'll try to be as non-technical as possible. So the data center ecosystem consists of landowners, developers, consultants from real estate, mechanical, electrical, architects, etc. Equipment manufacturers, telecom and energy service providers, data center operators, investors, cloud service providers, and consumers. Now, such is such large as the ecosystem as far as the data center industry is concerned. Let's start from the top. The consumer. The consumer accesses or uses a web application. It could be on his laptop or on his mobile. Now, this is what we call let's say accessing an application through a mobile over cloud. You are inevitably essentially accessing a cloud, which we will discover a little later as to how are you accessing that application. The physical device that you are carrying essentially wirelessly gets connected over internet to a large server farm or IT systems consisting of servers, storage, networking and security devices, etc., where the software applications resides. Now, to be able to access this application on round-the-clock basis, this server farm needs to be up and available on a 24/7 basis, which means it requires uninterrupted supply of electricity, internet, and security protocols. The data center as a platform provides this required infrastructure to the IT system. Now, this is one side of the story. The other side of the story is the data centers are technical buildings. The foundation is indeed real estate, owned and provided by landowners. The building exteriors, let's say including the critical mechanical and electrical infrastructure, is built by developers, equipment manufacturers, etc., in partnership with real estate consultants, architects, and general contractors. The interior core of the data center building is designed and executed by specialized consultants, equipment suppliers, and system integrators. The data center operator runs the facility operations either by themselves or take more professional help and provide this specialized or conditioned space as a service to its consumers, corporates, startups, or even cloud service providers. Did I miss the investors? No, not yet. They are a horizontal layer that cuts across this entire ecosystem and partner with each and every stakeholder. Back to you.
Excellent. Excellent. So basically what you have said, Prashant, is that a data center is a physical facility that organizations use to house their critical applications and data. By application, it can be an email facility, or it can be ERP, or it can be AI and complex big data. And what you have said regarding the components, you have said that there are these 4 components. First is, you have said that there is an IT infrastructure, which means server, storage, network. The second infrastructure which you have alluded to is electrical infrastructure, which means the UPS, generators, switches. The third was the mechanical infrastructure, which means cooling systems and racks. And fourth is the general construction, which also you need experts for.
Yes.
So, super. So let me go to Vivek now and ask him as to what he would like to add to this definition, or he would like to further bring some other granularity about data centers, Vivek.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good definition that Prashant gave. I'll try to sum it in a very often used term regarding data centers, that even the cloud needs a building. And because there are so many of us from the real estate fraternity on the panel, I thought this is probably the right way to start it. And I've had this conversation with a lot of other people in the past where they've said that, yeah, I know what a data center is. But what they also don't realize is that how this space has evolved globally and in India in the last 24 to 36 months has also changed the definition. So one granularity that I could share with you is that there are tiers of definition of data centers. So there's a tier 1, 2, 3, 4 definition by the data center fraternity. Now, most of the data centers that have probably come up historically in India specifically were tier 1 and tier 2. What we are seeing now is tier 3 plus, and there are many firms who are looking at tier 4 as well, which need actually 2 separate grids, which are difficult to achieve in all locations. But tier 3 plus are data centers where all the technical elements that we just discussed before me, they reach such a level of expertise that the downtime is negligible. So in a tier 1, tier 2 data centers earlier, we had a downtime of 27, 28 hours in a year. Now we're talking about downtime in a year reduced to a few minutes, and which is where the criticality comes in. In fact, again, I'll try to give another anecdotal evidence, and coming back to the cloud statement. The fact that why this has become so important is that we are on Zoom having this conversation. So hypothetically, if Zoom had their own data center in their own building, they probably wouldn't have been able to meet up the post-pandemic demand. The fact that they were on cloud allowed them to expand exponentially and meet this global demand. And that's one major change that has happened in the last few years, which has further accentuated. This is just one of the things, but further accentuated the need for data centers, and the classification has changed. I'm sure during the course of this conversation, we'll talk about more classifications, but the world has changed in this asset class. It's still an emerging asset class, even in the US, and not just in India. It's a new asset class here, but when I speak to my colleagues in the US, they are also treated as an emerging asset class, which is where it makes it even more exciting for everyone in India and internationally.
When we were younger, we were very excited to go to hill stations because the clouds used to enter the buildings. Now you are saying in every other building there is a cloud. So basically cloud, the word cloud means a collection of data centers and maybe an array of data centers. That also is good clarification for me. Great. Coming to Piyush, one point which Prashant brought in was regarding investors. So is there any lens through which the investors look at this, look at data centers, which you would like to bring in here while we are just defining the class?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary, for asking this question. Just to dissecting more on the stakeholders, and which also relates to a question of where each investor can participate. So overall data center space, from a stakeholder investor perspective, can be in 3 buckets, which is one is a development company, second is a management company, and maybe third is a customer. Right. In the development company, we have someone who owns real estate, who will develop the data center, incur all the capital expenditure. But we all know data center is very capital intensive. And in Indian players, you have players like Hiranandani's and Adani's. For a management company, the company and the people who have technical expertise and capabilities of running a data center. And from Indian context, again, Yota or internationally NTT or SG Telemedia. And then from customers' perspective, we have telecom companies the retail e-commerce companies, the banking companies who require data center. Now, an investor can participate, one at the holding company level, which is the asset heavy, but who holds the asset, or one can come at the management company level, where the entire expertise of management is there. So today the investors, in India are looking at more of yielding assets, right, where which can give them more stable and operating income. So they may want to possibly participate at the development company level, where you have a stable, you have asset, and which can give them yielding income. If at all someone wants to participate in the overall valuation and overall value creation, then someone can come at the management company level. So this the structure is still evolving. The overall propco and the opco, and we have seen this happening in other related sectors, such as student housing or co-living, where you have a asset heavy company, which is more like a prop company, and you have a company which has more expertise in running the operations, which is more like opco.
Yeah, great points. So to wrap this up, Sharad, we have already heard what a data center is, what are the different categories of data centers, and what are the different stakeholders in the data center. Now, what are the different types of data centers, or let me say, how are they chronologically evolving? Sharad.
Sure. Thanks, Pavan. Thanks for putting together this excellent panel on this topic. If you look at, we've been dealing with data for several decades, and initially how the data centers, or as they were not called at that time, it was all done in-house within the companies, like most services. And then it was all within the enterprise. People would buy servers, buy the software, have a big IT team, do everything in-house. Slowly, as the wave of outsourcing started, first, in a similar location, and then offshoring, people moved to managed services, where they would have the same kind of own the same physical infrastructure, but all the services were outsourced. So they didn't have to keep a huge IT team in-house, and the IT team was free to handle the other issues. Now, as I think in this century, and specifically in the last 10-15 years, we've moved forward, where even those, you don't need to own the whole services yourself, but you can own your own servers and certain other network equipment and co-locate it in a single, let's say, premises, where the other services like electricity, like the internet, cooling, security, all technical services are provided by the service provider. So you outsource that element, but you still own the physical servers and racks and all of that. And the fourth, which is what I think Vivek also referred to, giving the example of Zoom, where you fully move to the cloud, where you don't own anything, and it's all totally as a service on a fully kind of a flexible model. So that is where we've come to, and that gives us opportunity to rapidly scale up and down as the need may be, and also gives us flexibility as our need changes. We can have different types of servers or different requirements, different applications running there. So all that flexibility this kind of setup brings.
Great. So all the four setups you have explained very, very clearly. Coming to Sunil. Sunil, now we have understood what a data center is. You have known what a data center is been for many, many years. In fact, you are one of the important catalysts in moving this class forward from the Hiranandani Group side. So I would like to know, what are the main stimulants, the main tailwinds for this sector?
Thanks, Pavanji. As all the panelists actually explained, data center essentially we are using for hosting everything what we are using on either our mobile devices or our laptops and desktops. It can be internet-based contents like all our movies and games and e-commerce and everything what we do on internet. Or it can be our enterprise applications, which can be our SAP, our Oracle, our email server, our insurance application, core banking application, whatever. So ultimately there are two purposes: internet facing applications, content which we all use as consumer focused content, and second is the enterprise employee focused content. Now, key point is this: data centers came into our lives in late 90s and early 2000s, practically along with when the internet came into our lives. My presumption is till 2014-15, this was never a hot topic. It never became a topic of interactions like this, where I would say sector like real estate is talking about it, the government is talking about it, industry bodies are talking about it. Why it is so? While it is there in our lives, but it was there in the hidden. Somewhere in the hidden, it was lurking in the background. People like us were doing something, but you all were like not even aware about this. The reason is the sudden and huge explosion, and I would say emergence of multiple factors, which has led to a phenomenal growth in the last 5 or 6 years, and which we feel will keep on growing over next 7 to 10 years. And I would divide that into 4 or 5 factors, which you call as tailwinds. First is consumer driven. The data is exploding. It's all around us. We all know, we all have spoken about it, right? From the time when we were using data on a dial-up modem, I think many of us will be remembering, to the time when the 2G came into our lives, then the 3G came, and then now is the time when we all are using 4G. We can see the way speed has increased, right? As more and more speed and convenience is given, we all as consumers would like to have more and more access to data. We would like to access videos, but not only just photos and text. Naturally, it leads to growth of data. Smartphone prices, how it used to be and how it is, that today every single rickshaw puller and vegetable vendor also carries a smartphone and is very, very adept at using that touch screen. We all have seen in our lives. The data plan, and again, this is again a link, very much linked to the telecom revolution, where the telecom wave led by people like Airtel and Vodafone and now the Jio impact, that the data plan today in India actually happens to be almost 1/5 of the price compared to what is available in Singapore or US. So naturally, when it is so cheap, any and every one of us would like to use data. As much as we use more and more device and data, naturally at the back end, people will feel like creating more and more content, and where that content is going and getting hosted, it is in data center. So this is one very, very big factor, that because of this underlying driving factors, the data is growing crazily. Broadband in our homes nowadays, we used to be like 2 megs and 4 megs used to be happy. Today we are easily getting in our homes a broadband, which is a 100 meg connection, right? With economic prosperity, we all are suddenly, and of course in India, we are too English speaking, we have got disposable income, the middle class is growing crazily. We are also very, very comfortable using net banking. We are comfortable using e-commerce. We are comfortable using all the modes of payments, which government also is pushing. We know how RuPay has grown, how UPI and other channels are coming in. And all these things are just leading to a huge creation of content. We are, by the way, it's not only backend companies who are creating content for us and we are consuming. We all, even right now, are creating content. We are taking our selfies on our WhatsApps and our photos and sharing with the friends all the time. Where is this content going? Data centers. So that
sorry to interrupt you. One point is data explosion, which has happened because of intense consumer activity, creating data, etc.
Absolutely.
And the other tailwinds are?
Yes. So coming on the second tailwind, which is very different from this, from consumer tailwind, which is enterprise driven. This is something which I think Prashant raised it, or maybe I think Sharad took it up when he was explaining the various type of data centers. Enterprises so far were running their enterprise applications into their in-house captive data centers. With the time, as the complexity of IT has increased, the size and scale of these data centers are increasing, the power requirements are growing, the scalability requirements are growing. People suddenly are realizing, in my commercial building, if let's say the power goes down because some admin person is handling that building, my data center can go down, my business can go down. So gradually, and by the way, COVID has just led to a big phenomena, I would say speeding up this phenomena, where enterprises are doing away with their captive data centers and moving to third-party data centers, because then they can get rid of this problem in this COVID time, the last 5-6 months, people were not able to access their captive because of lockdown. And most of these captive centers are not made to the highest scale of quality. Most of the CIOs would rather like to move their captive data centers and that hardware of theirs, where the applications are running, to a third-party data center, because, and as you might have seen, even in the federal and the state governments, various directives which came, data centers are classified as essential services. So they kept on operating. That's why we are able to do this session. So this is second effect, that all those captive data centers gradually are moving to third-party data centers. In this third-party data centers, we have cloud operators. So when we are hearing Amazon has come in, Azure has come in, and Google has come in, and for that matter, Alibaba has come in, these are just cloud operators on which enterprises are moving their SAPs and workloads. But where these clouds are running, these clouds are also ultimately running into a third-party data centers. And because these cloud operators are handling the IT of the large enterprise, which is practically unlimited, as much as these cloud operators grow, underlying data center operator will have to keep on delivering more and more data center capacity to these cloud operators. And that, by the way, happens to be the largest reason why there is an explosion of data center capacity. At the same site, the cloud operators are asking data operators to give building after building after building. And obviously, it also is leading to a huge power demand in that facility. The third element, Pavanji, is that today it is humans like you and me who are using data centers. On our devices and laptops and all. But the time to come is of devices. It is our sensors, our refrigerators, our TVs, our smart TVs. They are the ones, which are actually going to use internet. A single connected car will generate a data much more than which all the consumers put together in a single hour. Where this data will go, again, a data center. It has to be processed in microseconds and given back to the car. That data, what scale it will take, none of us can even imagine, right? So that is the time to come. It is only waiting for 5G to come in, because 5G will be able to handle 10 times the speed current compared to 4G. The moment you have a very, very good use case of IoT, AI, ML, the intelligent machines, which will be computing the things in real time and giving decisions to us, it will lead to a much, much further growth for data centers. And the last, I'm taking more time, Pavanji. The last, which is basically the government digital push. Ever since, I think, last 5 or 6 years, we have seen the government trying to push digital initiatives, be it smart cities, be it Aadhaar, be it Jan Dhan, be it micro accounts, be it various channels of payments. In fact, one master decision was taken by this current government was that earlier all the department, ministry, state government used to make their own what called the state data centers, small captive data centers. This government allowed for empanelment of all the private data center and cloud operators, and now every single government initiative can be hosted into a third-party data center. And the localization debate, the data privacy, data protection debate is ultimately going to lead to a whole lot of data localization in the country. The social media portals, which are not there in India at the moment, many of them are not there in India, they ultimately will be compelled to host in India, and that will again lead to a huge push for that. So there are multiple drivers which are leading to this rush for data center capacity in India.
Excellent. You have said basically 6 tailwinds. One is the consumer data explosion. The other is the enterprises going more and more, getting more and more digitally transformed. Thus, the data creation becomes more. Third, perhaps, which you alluded to, was the enterprise consumer interface of e-commerce. Fourth, you said, is the government push, whether it is talking about Digital India and so many other laws which are taking the government services mandatorily on the digital platforms. Fifth is the Internet of Things. From Internet of People, now things will also create data, and things like technologies like AI and ML will require a lot of data crunching and proportionately add to this. And last is the push for localization, etc., because of which you feel data centers are getting at least these 6 engines driving them. Yeah. So coming to Sharad, what else is driving this let me say, what looks like a juggernaut after we have heard from one of the main pilots of this sector. What else is driving this juggernaut?
Yeah, I think one other thing that is driving this is, need for speed or latency, as they call it in technical terms. So earlier we were using data centers, let's say located in Europe or Asia Pacific, and there was a lag of few milliseconds. But now we've grown so impatient that if we run a YouTube video or Netflix and that circle comes, waiting to connect or downloading, people just click off or go to something different. So now the requirement is that we cannot use this hub model, and requirement is that these data centers are closer to the population centers, and combined with the data localization norms, that is why we're seeing a huge push towards data centers in India. The other, so that is on that side. Other is from the financial side. What we've seen, and especially through this pandemic, is that this is more sticky revenue and more, I would say, recession proof, if I can say that. And there are data center REITs in Singapore and in the US, and they've given over 20% return through this pandemic, whereas most other sectors of real estate are either negative or have broken even. So from an investor point of view, there is a lot of interest. And since business can go anywhere, and like we were being serviced from Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Europe, a reverse can also happen. We can capture markets like Africa and Middle East and host their data in India. So those are additional trends that I see that will keep propelling this sector in India. One other data point I came across, and this is in terms of data center capacity, in terms of megawatts per million of population. So in Europe, it is 106 megawatts per million population. In Asia Pacific, it is 45. And India currently, despite the Yotta data center opening, we are less than 1. So there is a huge way to go for us.
Excellent point. And I love your point regarding that this is a sticky revenue. When other sides of real estate are kind of, let me say, slowing down, and which has not been the case in earlier pandemics. Earlier pandemics used to give a fillip to real estate because of whatever was the level of evolution of the medical understanding at that time. 2 centuries ago, pandemics were thought to be based on the dubious miasma theory, that toxic fumes come out of the soil, and these fumes, when we inhale, we become ill. So the real estate sector got a very good fillip because all the soiled roads were paved with flagstones, as you see in Europe, millions of square kilometers. When the bubonic plague came, rat was the culprit. So the designs of homes changed, drain pipe designs changed, the scaffoldings changed. Similarly, cholera brought in zoning regulations, etc. So real estate industry used to always flourish after a pandemic. But however, medical technology has made things more clearer now. And I think by your bringing in this point, perhaps real estate has also found a new engine of compensatory growth in this pandemic, which is the digital data center piece. Great point, Sharad. Coming to Vivek. Vivek, what would you like to add to the tailwinds behind data centers which have not been touched so far? Can't hear you, Vivek.
So between Sharad and Sunil, I think a lot of those tailwinds have already got included. I'll just probably try to add a few more numbers to what Sunil was talking about, and that just shows you the magnitude of what we are up against. Because when you say data, and let's just throw numbers, most of this data that we see, whether it's through the YouTubes or the enterprise, about 90% of that has been created in the last 2 to 3 years. That's very important. We've been looking at all these things for a very long time, but 90% of that is very, very recent. And this is going to change. Now, let me just throw some other bigger numbers. In 2020, there will be about 40 trillion gigabytes of data that will be there, which is 40 zettabytes. Right? These are all data available, information available in public domain. And an internet user, just one internet, or the internet users, all of them, on a single day, just one day, generate 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Now, these are definitions we hadn't even heard of a few years ago. And we just keep joking about it that if you and I want to download the entire internet, it will take us 180 million years to download. So that's the scale we are talking about. And it's not something about just in India, but it's how the world has changed. Because we expect this change to continue in times to come, we see more positivity. The other tailwind, and again add to, I think what Sharad was talking about, the investment side of it, data centers is not something which can be done by any other firm. But yes, it's very technical in nature and you need specialists for that, but it's also very capital intensive. And thankfully, one of the tailwinds that is there is that we are beginning to see a lot of domestic and international capital beginning to evaluate investments in data center platforms and firms in India. We've seen an acquisition recently by Equinix, a US-based firm. We've seen private equity funds like Carlyle and Warburg Pincus put in money in platforms, and we know of several other reputed blue chip global names who want to invest. This is not something which will be done like a typical office residential building that you see. The investment that goes in a data center is, the real estate part of it is probably just 10-15% of the total investment. It's the IT and everything else that goes over and above real estate, which is the real capital consumption for data center, which is why it becomes a very technical and a very specialized field, and not just anybody can, as we saw in the 2010s, that anybody who had money and land turned into a real estate developer. There is no way that any real estate developer can turn into a data center specialist. You need the right kind of land, the right kind of expertise, and sufficient capital to do justice to this asset class.
Great point, Vivek. So what you're saying is, first of all, you have amplified at what pace the data is exploding. And secondly, you're saying one of the tailwinds is the proof that such large and thorough players are boarding this bus with conviction, like the Carlyles of the world. Great point. Coming to Piyush. Piyush, what would you like to add to the tailwinds here? You're coming from the capital investment side.
Yeah. So actually, if we go back in history, 2007-8, when the actual real estate boom started, whether it's residential, commercial, in commercial, real estate, we had not even seen, couple of $1 billion of investment coming in. In last 15 years, we have got tens of billions of investment coming in. That time, there was no infra for large tenants, large developers. In last 10, 12 years, this all haven't got built in. So the entire ecosystem has got, constructed for investors to get confidence. So I think the same kind of, the boom we will see as far the data, and data center business is concerned. Today, if it all we compare on the commercial business or commercial absorption may not be very linked to Indian economy, because you have global tenants, and India is an attractive destination. Why people will keep occupying space here. So that the same story is likely to continue and will take to a next level as far as data center is concerned. And data center is definitely not a real estate specific play, as Vivek also was mentioning, whether it's a cost angle, which is less than 15-20% of the total cost. I think it's more of a technology and infrastructure play. And today we have investors in India mainly talking about as a real estate play. Over a period of time, once the entire ecosystem gets built, the entire cycle gets completed in next 2, 3, 4 years time, where people enter and exit, you will see large scale of investors, coming in. And I think the great, the point comes is the stable and annuity based income. India is a market which gives you, 8 to 9% as an attractive destination vis-a-vis all other emerging markets or even global markets are below 5%. So this anything which can give a stable income of about 9-10% will always remain very, very attractive. And if at all we look at data centers economics, right, whether the return of capital employed, is more than 19-20%, you have a higher EBITDA margins, it comes with own risk, right? But it definitely gives a delta over other real estate classes. It may also bring in at least more stability as far as commercial and residential as an asset class is concerned. So the in next 4 to 5 years time, once the overall ecosystem gets built in, people see the entire cycle, we'll see more capital coming in.
So you have added to what Sharad said, that this is not only a sticky investment, it is also a mouth-watering investment if it is at 18-19% EBITDA as compared to what 8 to 9 we get usually from most industries. Very good point. Prashant, your last words on what are the other tailwinds for data centers?
Sure, Pawan. In fact, one of the problems with data is, the sun never sets on the creation of new data. And it is also researched, by end of this year or by early next year, there will be, 40 times more bytes of data than there are stars in the observable, universe. And I think one of the reasons that why, our Asia Pacific Investor Intention Survey, found that when it comes to preferred alternate segments, about 30% of respondents across the region are considering investments in data centers this year, which is a substantial increase from 18% recorded in 2019. If you look at until a few years back, the data center market in India was dominated by the domestic operators. However, the presence of global operators is increasing via inorganic strategies now. The last 2-3 years have seen major influx of overseas operators into India, primarily on the back of data localization laws, where the multinational corporates are mandated to store and process data within the Indian geography. And further on the back of major push by the government of India on digital transformation and Make in India initiatives, with government leading from the front by moving some of their marquee projects onto cloud as well as to outsource data centers. Some of them, if I have to name, GST, Aadhaar, income tax, excise and customs, Ayushman Bharat, etc., to name a few. India is probably recording one of the highest data consumption per smartphone per month at arguably the lowest unit cost. The role of data centers will only going to get widened by the surge in this data storage and processing requirements.
Very good points. And it brings to my mind another point regarding what could be a tailwind going forward. If there are data localization laws, there are data internationalization opportunities also. And if global companies were to look for secure countries where they can lodge their data or house their data in Asia, and with who they have a similar political dispensation and long years of shared peace, as well as the country's ability to not subject itself or to avert any pressure coming from their rival country, then it will be India. Because India is the country which is not dominated by any superpower anywhere in the world and even in Asia. And other countries will not be able to perhaps secure that data so reassuringly as we can, because we bow to no pressure from any part of the neighborhood. So that is one. And another tailwind I was thinking was that there is a strong presence of local construction contractors like L&T, Vastunidhi, Sterling and Wilson, etc., which also makes this tarmac that much more ready for data centers. So great points panel, really value added points. Now let us come to the headwinds or speed breakers. What are the speed breakers you see, Vivek, for data centers or headwinds?
Yeah, and these are there are a few, and it's probably linked to what I said earlier with regards to this being a slightly technical asset class. This is not where you can build apartments or sell residential plots wherever, or have office buildings in multiple locations. So there are a lot of pre-qualifying criteria that go into identifying sites for a data center, and these also vary from business to business. So whether it's distance from the railway stations, metros, away from chemical industries, even distance from certain residential areas, depending on the size of data center that you're doing. So not every site would qualify to be developed as a data center. There is a lot of prerequisites that go into identifying, shortlisting, and qualifying a location before one can goes into it, and that goes without saying that the power availability, the infrastructure, the fiber, and the other requirements have to be met. So there are a long list of criteria that one needs to keep in mind before identifying a more suitable location. And again, as I mentioned and hinted in the last statement, this is something which would require a lot of capital in India and globally. Only those firms, even the existing Indian data center firms, to be able to meet the demand, will have to look at more capital sources to make sure that they expand their footprint and keep up with the demand that we are seeing. So capital and the nature of how data centers have to be set up, not just anywhere. You cannot, most of the buildings that we see which are ready cannot be used for data centers. Plus the power that is required, not every location has enough power. So as a country, we can theoretically be called as power surplus, but when it comes to distribution, when it comes to the actual on-ground substation availability, transformers, and the last mile connectivity to that remains a challenge. We have almost 15 cables landing into India now, but it's the interior, the domestic fiber network, which remains a challenge. So, but that's the case with every new emerging asset class. So when malls were being talked about 20 years ago, when IT parks were being spoken about 20 years ago, every mall and IT park that we see in the country today has come up in the last 20 years, right? And all of them had headwinds, all of them had challenges, but still, I think we have one of the best assets across each city now. So there would be headwinds. These are not something which is going to stop the growth of this asset class.
Great point. Hurdles should not be able to seen as should not be seen as reasons to stop progress. You mentioned infrastructural headwinds, as well as you answered to questions coming from Group Head of FM and GM of Shapurji Palanji regarding locational issues also in your answer. So coming to Sharad. Sharad, what are the other headwinds?
Yeah, see, I think real estate continues to be, I think, the biggest headwind, especially on the cost side. Given our, within the country lack of infrastructure, we don't have the option like, let's say in Europe, to go 50 kilometers away from the city center, because then you will not get power, you will not get internet, you will probably not even, your highly skilled manpower will not want to come there and work in that kind of a place. But if you try to place it in the CBD, it becomes very, very expensive. So availability of real estate along with the infrastructure, I think the cost balance is very important. Right now, India is competitive. Our costs are, anywhere from 30 to 50% lower than other markets in the Asia Pacific region. But as the demand for data center grows, we will have to figure out ways to keep these costs in control so that we can capture a higher share of the opportunity and let it not go to other markets.
Excellent point. What would you like to add to that, Prashant? Headwinds.
some of the headwinds, some of the headwinds are already talked about, and I'll touch upon, some of the other ones, which is, around policy framework, incentives, skilled resources, and probably, renewable energy sources as well. Now, not having a policy is actually a double-edged sword. It works in favor as well as against the industry. So while the data center park policy was mentioned in the union budget this year, the details will be interesting to see. It will be interesting to see what kind of details that we see. Already we talked about the energy. So I'll talk about the whole business is capital and technology intensive. And over the past few years, data center growth has been concentrated in regions and countries that offer tax incentives. Several state and local governments provide investment and tax incentives based on economic development, where incentives focused on effective facilities operations and renewable energy sources procurement. A few states were obviously the first movers in this space, and others should follow the suit soon. The third is the data center market has a strong presence of general contractors. Now, expertise in developing facilities in a shorter period will be key criteria for operators in the selection of general contractors. The major challenge for for several contractors in the region is the scarcity of skilled workforce to manage multiple hyperscale projects. Right? We've already talked about power. We've already talked about network connectivity. The other is carbon emission. Carbon emission is rapidly heading to the top and will become a big environment concern moving forward. Data center leaders will be required to put in significant efforts for a better tomorrow with sustainability measures. One of the things I wanted to talk about, which Sharad mentioned, India's cost structure is probably 30 to 50% lower. Unfortunately, now this I take it as a headwind that India is only tagged cheap. Right? But when it comes to building world-class data center infrastructure, the data center operators cannot really compromise on the quality and the standards of the equipment. And quality and superior standards definitely come at a cost. And it cannot come out to be that cheap. Thanks.
I think excellent points you brought in, Prashant. So you've spoken about policy. It is right that policy can be liberating, policy can be stifling. And usually world over, because government policy is not so thorough, it is stifling. So thorough policy is required to ensure that there is cyber security, there is data privacy, there is scope of movement of data internationally so that global operators want to locate in India without any disproportionate costs or restrictions. There should be a Trade Secret Act which should protect their privacy, but at the same time, if you make policy which is not far-sighted or not flexible enough, it can become a big hurdle. And one of our other panelists and friends, Gurcharan Das, the other day told me about a book he has written, which is India Grows at Night. The title is India Grows at Night. And I asked him, why have you written, what is the meaning of the title? He says, because India grows only at the night, because in the night the government is sleeping. So I told him, some governments are not sleeping in the night also. So it is good that we have such a government which is really understanding, or at least the leader is understanding the width of technologies and how technologies are changing the pecking order in the world. At the same time, we need to be very thorough with our policies so as to not, so that they do not straitjacket us. The second point which you brought about was carbon emission. Yes, and there are also counter forces to such headwinds. For example, one of our other panelists, the CEO of Adani Green Energy Limited, from him and others, we learned that Adani has decided to invest 70,000 crores in solar data center parks in Andhra Pradesh. Sunil is also planning to do something similar. So that would be a great movement forward. And the last point which you made about unskilled workforce, you're right, 40% of the workforce as per an NROC study has to be reskilled in AI, IoT, ML and blockchain. Great points, Prashant. Coming to Sunil. So Sunil, coming to Piyush. Piyush, what would you like to add to these headwinds?
Yeah, and I think the point which was made out, the having the stable and predictable government policies, I think is very important. And if at all we look back in other asset classes, for example, in commercial real estate, we got STPI policy for development of technology parks, right, which incentivized the developers to construct, whether it's income tax exemption or a GST exemption. Or now we have special economic zone, which went for more than 10, 12 years. We have free trade warehousing zones, which is promoting export or re-export of goods in and around port. So somewhere, there has to be a stable policy around data center in combination within state governments and central government. Also on the fiscal side, whether it's income tax or GST has to be clearly spelled out. And if at all we look from investors' perspective, these are yielding income. Even a 1 or 2% leakage from a taxation front can make a big difference. And to give you an example, we have now 2 REITs listed, and one in Jan-Feb this year there was an anomaly of how the dividends from REITs will be taxed, right? Because of that, one entire Mindspace issue got delayed, right? So having a stable and a very predictable policy both on the fiscal part and also on the be it protection and privacy laws is very important.
Great point. Regulatory predictability both in the operational space as well as the fiscal space, so that the investor does not get any rude shocks or leaks, as you said. Great point. Sunil, how would you like to sum up the headwinds?
Pawanji, there are certain things like one thing which I think is most of the data center operators are facing, especially the international operator who are coming and trying to build in India, is just the sheer size and number of approvals which are required from the time an idea comes up to the time they go live with the data center. And many of them, because of that, possibly even after 3 years of maybe having these plans or acquiring the land, they have not been able to go live in India. We have real examples even as of now in India, simply because they just get caught up with so much of approvals, right from land acquisitions to pre-construction when you're submitting your business plans, environmental clearances, during construction, post-construction. What benefits are available, let's say in IT, ITES policies or other policies. Again, to take those benefits, again, there are a whole lot of approvals. If you want to get fiber, a dark fiber, or want to connect multiple data centers or landing station where the internet fiber is coming, again, set of approvals. If you want to make data center in a, let's say, SEZ, again, there's set of approvals. So essentially, and I submitted a paper actually to MIT, and which actually lists down almost a list of 55 approvals which are required by a data center operator before they can go live. Which obviously, the large international operators who are looking India very, very seriously somehow get too dissuaded with this problem. And possibly that is also a opportunity for real estate operators to come as a propco and actually tie up with those data center operators and actually solve this problem for us. Or parallelly, government take note of that and trying to create some sort of single window mechanism to at least make some of these approvals, either at state level or central level to make the things faster for the operators. That is one. Second is a little tactical that, data center as a building class is very, very different from a commercial or residential building. But the building code which is applied when the building design is approved, for example, or when a CFO gives the approval, we are still applying the same commercial building norms for approving a data center. A simple example is in a whole data center of 5 lakh square feet, possibly the number of people who will be sitting will be less than 50. But we still are supposed to have the parking as per the parking norms of a commercial building. You end up creating 2 basements, 3 basements, or a huge setback area, but actually never use that area at all, which you could have used productively for many other purposes, but you still just end up wasting that much of space, creating basements. It increases your time, it increases your cost. Same is the case with the number of staircases you need and the floor to ceiling height you need and all the stuff. in India, even today, like one of the panelists said that, for a tier 4 type of a data center, which to gives a 100% uptime to customers, uh, uh, you know, uh, India possibly is one country where you cannot have power sources coming from two different independent power providers. You still, most of the cities in India, with some exceptions, have only one power distributor, which may be the state-run utility company. So you really cannot have an alternate source of power, which obviously becomes a huge hindrance. And if the power quality is not good, you have to run your data center then on alternate source of power like DG sets and all. In places like Delhi and Chennai, unlike Mumbai is the only city where we sort of totally depend on utility power, but every other city you can expect to run 4, 5, 6 hours on diesel fuel. So that is another area. And I think the last is that same relating to power. I think somebody said that, by the way, almost 70 to 80% of running cost of data center is pure power after the capex is invested. And 3% of the global energy today is being used by data centers worldwide. And this is expected to go 10% by 2030. We can just imagine the type of power data centers are consuming. So the type of power you intake, how green it is increasingly going to be important. Countries like Singapore and US are already bringing legislations around this. It is not too far that India also will start thinking around that. So how data center operators can create captive solar power plant, can use the solar power capacity of one state into another state so that interstate wheeling arrangements are there. You are able to use more solar capacity in the daytime, generate, but store it or wheel it, upload it, but use it in the nighttime because nighttime sun cannot give us energy. These are some of the issues which will become much more, the industry will become much more vocal and government will have to make policies around this.
Excellent points. You have said, first of all, there is a lot of red tape in approvals, 55 approvals. So I would actually request Blue Circle, which has good listening posts and well-wishers in both MeitY and Niti Aayog, to add its humble voice to what you are proposing there. The second you have said is that modification of regulations around commercial buildings, for example, parking and staircases, which may not be similarly required in data centers. Also, regulations which are, let me say, fossilized, because fossilized regulations around power distribution or power sourcing from only one company, all those things need to change. And the last you have said is a futuristic point, that it is better that this power which we'll now have to generate to run data centers, because there are other industries also emerging like EVs, which will also consume a lot of power. It rather be green. It rather be green for environmental reasons. It also rather be green, sorry, for the attraction it will bring for the foreign operators to invest here if that green power is there. And you have also pointed out to the importance of energy storage systems, etc. Great points, Sunil. Lastly, coming to all of you for your last comments on the way forward, and let me begin there with Sharad.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about a lot of the points here, but I think given where we are, we have right now 500 million smartphone users, and we are expecting to double that to 1 billion users in the next 10 years. And so even for each user, the amount of data consumption is also, as 5G comes in, as IoT comes in, and other big data automation starts happening in a larger scale, the amount of data that will be generated and consumed and stored and analyzed will keep on growing exponentially. So I see a huge demand. One is we have to do catch up with the developed world, but even beyond that, which itself is a huge step. And then there will be further growth that we are seeing because of all these trends coming together. So I think this is a sector that is an emerging sector, but I think it is poised for rapid growth in India, especially in the near term, next 4 to 5 years. And I think it will become one of significant sectors where we'll probably have a separate right from policy to everything, we will have a separate chapter like residential and commercial to talk about this as we go forward.
Your points, Prashant, on last points on way forward. Also, please try to address one generic question which has come from several people. That is, what is the chance of locating data centers closer to residential zones? And perhaps this question is coming because they have seen that malls and other buildings have need to be repurposed now. So what is the scope for that, Prashant?
So the pandemic has allowed the data center industry to prove its resiliency in a way that it has never before. Regardless of what happens in the broader economy, people are still checking their emails. Right? The pandemic has also enforced organizations to think of 100% business continuity, even when there is no disaster situation around. During the initial months of lockdown, the on-premise data centers could not be accessed, and corporates faced hard time for any planned or unplanned downtime or let's say maintenance or upgrade activities, and only the third-party data centers could operate without any interruption since they were categorized under essential services. Right? The future will be corporates adopting a more hybrid approach where they segregate their IT infrastructure into co-location centers and cloud, depending on specific use, performance, and flexibility needs. I would also like to state here, it is researched, right, that by 2025, an average person is likely to interact with a smart device nearly 4,800 times a day. So please watch out your screen time, everyone. And this projection is roughly triple of where we stand today. And considering the current pandemic situation, this projection is likely to be realized sooner than later. Coming to your questions of data centers, near residences, etc. One of the points, and the panel has been discussing, which is about the critical power infrastructure, right? The DG sets, the transformers, etc. Right? And we've also talked about the pollution, and both in terms of the air pollution as well as the noise pollution. When the DGs have to run for 6 to 8 hours, right? Whatever amount of acoustics that you plan around that, right? There's still a significant noise. And if the data centers have to run for 8 to 10 hours, imagine the kind of diesel that you are burning. With respect to the IT load, right? The higher the IT load, the more diesel that you burn. I mean, just give you a perspective. Let's say a data center, if they have diesel tanks, fuel storage of let's say 6 lakh liters, right? 6 lakhs liters, right? And if you're planning to burn that diesel for let's say 8 to 10 hours just to keep the data centers up and running, the kind of noise and sound pollution will be enormous. And of course, this is not a favorable situation for the residences around, or even for the hospitals around. Right? That's the primary criteria why the data centers choose to be away from residences and hospitals.
Excellent points. That means not only near, because the hospitals are going to spread, as some researchers show, they will become micro hospitals near condominiums. So both the hospitals, these micro hospitals, as well as condominiums, have something to fear if the power supply situation is not taken care of. Great point, that one, Prashant. Coming to Piyush. Piyush, what would you like to add to this? Plus, some people are asking as to what are the pricing challenges for data center services vis-a-vis international prices?
So on the way forward, for any business to succeed, there should be a good risk-return matrix, and there should be growth. I think the data center as an asset class provides both, and here the growth is not dependent, for any overseas business coming in. We have spoken a lot about how the data is going to grow, so there's enough business here. There's a good risk-return matrix. We have seen good EBITDA margins, good return on capital employed. I think all what we need is the more innovative form of capital raising, whether it's talking about infrastructure status to the sector and have more access to the bank funding, capital coming from REIT, whether it's a REIT specific to data center, which is still a while away, but definitely the existing REITs have a flexibility of 20%. They can put in other yielding asset classes. So we can see that capital coming in data center. And third is also cloud funding, right? We have seen, the AIFs and all coming in commercial and residential. And here also, since the growth story is very strong, possibly we'll see maybe next 3 to 5 years time crowdfunding where certain asset managers are raising capital to deploy in data centers, and in last 2.5 years time we have seen that coming in warehousing and industrial. So this is a natural extension which possibly will see in next 3 to 5 years time.
Great point. Coming to Vivek, what is the way forward in your mind?
Right, and I'll just again go back to the comfort with numbers when we speak about the way forward. Now, let's just focus on the colo data center firms in India. There are about 100 plus colo data centers in India. Of course, various shape and size, historical element there, of course, which add up to about 600 megawatt of total capacity in India in the top 7 cities. Now, we anticipate, and that's what's been corroborated by other research as well, that this would probably double. So we're looking at close to about 1100-1200 megawatt of capacity addition by 2025. This is what very close to our research is suggesting. This is what other independent research people have also been talking about. So there is clear need and demand for this thing to move forward. But the characteristic of demand, that demand is changing. So almost 50% of the existing capacity was cornered by, let's say, top 3 colo players. 5 years from now, there'll be far more number of colo players. So this doubling of addition of twice the current capacity is not going to happen because of just 2-3 players, but we'll have more and more Indian, international, funded and other organizations coming up and setting up these data centers across the key cities. The challenge would remain is that these transactions, these projects are time consuming. They require a lot of effort in terms of closure, in terms of not just the land acquisition and the building construction, but also with regard to the technical side of it. So currently, the way we sit, it's very heartening to see that if we have about 600 megawatts, another 1200 is expected to come up in the next 5 years. But it's not going to be a slam dunk. This will require a lot of effort from experts across the entire ecosystem of data centers. And eventually, we would have a far more robust assets and projects across the country. If all things go right in the next 5 years, all the tailwinds, the headwinds that we spoke about, that entire jigsaw has to fall in place perfectly to make sure that this gets executed as per the estimates where we stand currently.
Great, very numerically compelling point, Vivek. Coming to Sunil. Sunil, first the answer to a couple of questions which are left, or let me put them in those broad buckets. The data centers are concentrated mostly in Mumbai and Chennai. And how can we take them to tier 2 cities, and what would be the challenges going forward on that? So that question, and then your comments on how you would like to wrap up this entire panel's points on way forward or any other subsection which we have visited.
Sure. Pawanji, the location of data center depends on a couple of factors. And the reason for Mumbai and Chennai being the primary centers in India is because they happen to be the 2 cities connecting India to the rest of the world. Mumbai connects the international fiber landing station in connecting India to the west, and Chennai connecting India to the east. And if we have to make a data center, let's say much more in interiors, then all the data traffic which is exchanged with rest of the world, either international audience coming and trying to access data from Indian data centers or Indian audience accessing data of rest of the world, ultimately it will mean a huge terrestrial fiber to take from that international landing station to the data center in the interior of the country. That becomes a cost which is into millions of dollars. Number one, the terrestrial fiber on land. Contrary to popular perception, international fiber actually happens to be cheaper when you take in bulk compared to the terrestrial fiber, simply because of the cost and complexity of laying the terrestrial fiber. And terrestrial fiber, especially in India, also has a unique problem of getting cut every single time, because for 10 reasons, there's so much of services below our roads, and any and every authority which will come up and, if this is not very, very planned, they will just come and cut the road and your fiber also get cut. We are all used to that fiber hanging on trees and all this thing. So that becomes a huge uptime issue for a data center. A data center may be great and 100% up, but if the fiber connecting data center to the rest of the world gets cut, you have a problem. So, and besides this, of course, Bombay and Chennai happens to have that, they happen to be urban cities, so manpower is not a problem, the power is not a problem, the fiber density is not a problem, and the target end users, the people to whom you want to serve the content also happen to be, these are mega cities. So these are some of the reasons why these cities are growing. But besides that, of course, Bangalore is a city which has grown, not for the international content perspective, but for the local IT, ITS companies which have got large campuses there. They want to put up their, let's say, the research labs and, all that compute which they're doing into data centers. Hyderabad has come up in a big way, thanks to some good progressive policies by the state, and things like that. And the north is one area which so far had not caught attention, while it is serving almost 30 to 40% of end users who use content of data centers. That is what I always wondered for all so many years, why it is not. There are problems like it is more prone to seismic activity, or the power is always a problem in place like Gurgaon and all. But gradually, with those, you can make robust buildings, and you can always take care of power through alternate mechanisms. Delhi will be a place to watch out for, and we can already see activity of data centers coming up in Delhi. Calcutta is another area to watch out for. There are international fibers being announced which will connect possibly an area near Calcutta or near Vizag to India, which will become alternate point to connect India to rest of the world. So we will definitely see in future places like Calcutta, giving the complete ecosystem, including international connectivity, power, fiber, good progressive policies, and becoming a center and destination. But frankly speaking, interior India, smaller B town, C town may not become hub for larger data center clusters which are coming up now, like 5 lakh square feet, 10 lakh square feet, or 40, 50 megawatt data centers. Many plan a town B and town C cities and B cities will become places for smaller data centers, what we call in our lingo as edge data centers. Once we have 5G and once we have the IoT coming in, the country will be needing a whole lot of very, very small pockets of data centers, which will be much smaller in capacity, but in almost every single town and city, which can serve the local need of a connected sensor or a connected car locally there, instead of coming all the way to a big cluster data center in Mumbai and Chennai. That is where we will see the emergence of smaller data centers in town B and town C. I mean, for a foreseeable future, till that time, we have a huge power upgrade, fiber upgrade, and I would say consumer demand into town B and town C. We will not see the large cluster data centers coming into smaller cities. So that is point number one. On second point, on way forward, Pavanji, I mean, the way what I can see is currently you have existing operators in India who carry reasonable market share. They are offering co-location services, they are offering cloud services, they are offering managed hosting services, because India as a pie was never so big, so every operator is offering all services. Depending upon how much capital they can access and depending upon the Indian experience, they surely will keep on growing. They are in the market, they will be in touch with the real estate operators for the core and shell needs, land, core and shell, and government approvals. That is what they look out for real estate operators, and many deals will keep on happening, which will add to the pie of growing this overall data center industry in India. But the second piece of operators with possibly much larger growth will be come up from the new operators who are talking right from start on a much larger scale. Now, whether it is the domestic conglomerates like Hiranandani or Adanis, who own all the underlying resources and capabilities which are needed to propel these data centers on a much larger way, or whether it is global largest of the operators like Equinix, or we have many of them who are already doing something in India, a Colt or a Princeton or a a Bridge or a DRT or a a NextDC or Stratus. There are many of them who I'm sure are in touch with all the panelists here who are looking to do something. But for all of them, the way forward, and that is where I think is the opportunity for all the real estate operators, is those operators know the know-how. They are the operators. They are the opco part. They don't know the propco part in India. That is where I think is the biggest opportunity for all the Indian real estate operators to tie up with the global operators. Let the global operator perform the role of an opco and also bring in the customer and the revenue and know how to run the business. But let the real estate operator take the role of a propco, invest into land, invest into core and shell. Now, whether it is into a safe return model, whether it's a JV model with equity stakes, that is something can be case to case. But I think in the times to come, we'll see an emergence of a whole lot of these models where the new players, which is international global operators and the local real estate operators coming in and creating much larger assets.
Excellent points. So you're saying that Starbucks would not have been able to be so successful if it had not tied up with a Tata.
Absolutely.
GE would not have been so successful if it had not tied up with a Wipro. So great point. That's the format forward, way forward. There are some very good questions. And though we are beyond time, we have such a huge number still listening to us, which speaks about their commitment as well as the quality of the dialogue which the panel is bringing forth. So I'm asking you 30 seconds answers for 30-second answers, Sunilji. Sunshine sector we spoke of was warehousing. Now we are saying sunshine sector is real estate. How do you compare both? 30 seconds.
Data center sector, because it is dependent on the underlying market drivers, which are so very strong that data will continue to remain in our lives and will continue to drive it. So it is going to grow big time in next 7 to 10 years. It will need possibly 5 times the investment compared to a commercial building, but the returns which it will give compared to a normal real estate building will actually much more than compensate for that. So please go for it.
So your bet is on data centers.
Absolutely.
Why is data center capacity measured in megawatts? 30 seconds.
A same data center of 3 lakh square feet can also have, let's say, 5,000 racks, but each rack consuming just about 2 kVA of power. But the same 3,000 square feet of building with 5,000 racks can have 30 megawatt, because each rack is consuming almost 6 megawatt, almost 6 megawatt of 6 kilowatt of capacity per rack. It totally depends on who the end users of that data center are. If the end users happen to be regular enterprises who typically consume 2 to 3 kVA per rack, you will have much lesser power consumption from the same 5,000 racks. But if it happens to be hyperscalers and content operators and the people who are doing high performance computing running AI and ML, they will consume much more power. Ultimately, in a data center, let's understand that land is just 10% of the cost. Core and shell is just 20% of the cost. 70% of the cost of a data center in CapEx is MEP, which is power and cooling. And similarly in OpEx also, almost 80% cost is just the power cost. That is why square feet has got a very limited application in data center measurement compared to the power which you are delivering.
So this megawatt is the metric for measuring the capacity of a data center, because it is actually related with how much power it is consuming.
Absolutely. And just to add to this, Pavanji, sorry, just to get into a little bit this thing, there are 2 megawatts we always talk. One is the megawatt which is consumed by the IT load which is running in that data center, the server and storage, how much power they are consuming. So let's say a data center with 5,000 racks, you have 30 megawatt of power to be consumed by the IT equipment. However, you also need a let's say additional maybe 20 megawatt of power that is required for cooling that data center. Now that cooling is something which is a variable factor, depends on your efficiency, how efficiently you cool. So normally when we talk about data center lingo, how much megawatt is, you don't talk about the total power of 30 plus 20 is equal to 50. You rather talk about the 30 megawatt which is consumed by the IT load.
Great point. Coming to cooling, there's a question on cooling also, that the water resources in many towns or cities are extremely limited. So how will you handle the cooling piece?
A fantastic question. So this is all relating to our design. So typically in data center, way back we used to use gas-based cooling. The typical air conditioner we use in our homes, which are gas-based, we call it DX cooling. Then now in the current scheme of things, every dental operator typically use two types of cooling. One is air cooled chillers and one is water cooled chillers. Because of the same issue which you're talking about, that you cannot have a guaranteed availability of so much of water for next 50 years in most of the cities, you would rather not go for a water cooled chillers, you would rather go for air cooled chillers. And today, thanks to the technological evaluation of evolution of chillers in the last couple of years, the PUE, which is one factor we all like talk every day in our lingo, power usage efficiency, which gives the efficiency matrix of your cooling. You can achieve as good a PUE nowadays, with air cooled chillers, where the water is just into a closed loop. You don't require too much of fresh intake of water every day. What you get in water cooled chillers. So most of the data center operators in Mumbai, for example, and all the new constructions that are happening, they're happening with air cooled chillers and not with water cooled chillers.
Last question. What are the ancillary industries which will develop because of data centers?
Multiple. So one and the biggest one obviously is the power industry, solar power industry, wind power industry, natural gas based power industry, because as I said that the power consumption by data centers will come into the eye of any and everybody, whether it is the civil rights activists, whether it is citizen activists, whether it is government, because of the sheer amount of power we all will be consuming. So it is earliest that we get into greener sources of power, so that industry will grow very, very big time. So whether it is the people who are providing solar panels, or whether it is the people who have got remote areas in Rajasthan or Maharashtra or Karnataka or Tamil Nadu, where you have got ample availability of sun and they have got enough land parcels, so that industry will grow. As we said, data center has got a huge intake of MEP. Now MEP is a one word, but within that you have electrical contractors, you have cooling contractors, you have building automation contractors, you have civil contractors. There are almost like 15-20 different type of contractors we use. I'm not talking about the equipment we import like UPSs and DGs and batteries and all. I'm talking about the low side work, which you call in our lingo, be it civil side, cooling side, power side. All those industries will grow because data center need an ample and huge amount of each one of them in any single building.
Excellent. So basically what you're saying is, not only is this data center an engine for growth for the real estate industry, it will be the fuel for growth for many ancillary industries. Super points made by the entire panel. There are a couple of other questions which are also extremely interesting, but I think in the interest of time, we will need to close now. I'm sure Siddharth will find a way of the questions reaching the right panelist. Siddharth.
So thank you very much, sirs. Our leaders and I took home so many nuggets from today's conversation, and very well moderated, Mr. Chaudhary. I'm still receiving positive messages from our leaders over email and on my WhatsApp as well. And thank you to our attendees for staying till the end and for sharing excellent questions, staying back in large numbers. Well, a lot of the questions have been wonderfully covered and has given us a well-rounded idea of the landscape. We've also received specific and focused questions, which may require longer and one-to-one discussions between the leaders in the audience and our expert pool. We would be happy to fix meetings between you and our pool of experts in the real estate space for mutual benefit. So whether you would like to engage with us on our expert pool, or as learners, or as leaders who would like to connect with us for membership to join our real estate circle, all the details of CXO engagements are also available on the bluecircle.co. We're soon launching our digital professional networking platform curated specifically for leaders in these 4 sectors, which are healthcare, e-mobility, energy, and real estate. And we're sending out invitations to the first 1,000. So thank you again, distinguished panel members, and thank you leaders in the audience. We look forward to such sessions in the future.
Superb panel, superb audience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you.
Thank you.